This is a photo of Nick Panasico. Back in 2018, he was honored with the Lifetime Achievement Award, as was the late Saul Holoff. And both of these gentlemen have a connection to our next Hall of Fame inductee. You see, back in 1964, Nick promoted his first ever concert. It was held at the old London Arena, and it starred Motown's The Supremes. And the opening act that night was the Johnny Stevens Sextet. They were a local R&B outfit that played local dances and shows in and around London. Shortly after their performance at the London Arena, Saul Holoff, who was managing Johnny Cash at the time, approached them and signed on as their manager. And one of the first things that happened at that time is they changed their name to Johnny and the Canadians. One of the things that made the band unique was their lead singer, Johnny Stevens. The transplanted Maritimer was one of the first black men to front a band in the rock and roll era in Canada. To induct Johnny and the Canadians, our first garage band of the 1960s, into the Forest City London Music Hall of Fame, here is former radio personality, car enthusiast, and a pretty good musician in his own right, Jim Chapman.
For the past few months, I've been writing the book about the London music scene in the 1960s, the teen scene, that is. And with your permission, I'd like to read a couple of short excerpts from that book. Way back in the early 60s, I went to a dance called the Optahop, emceed by Dick Williams, the tall one. He announced that next week's band would be a brand new one, the Johnny Stevens Sextet. The girl beside me thought that was hilarious, the sextet. But when I went back the following week, what I saw was not hilarious. It was marvelous. Johnny Stevens was a human dynamo on stage who had an energetic but very graceful style, a powerful voice that was both raw and polished, and a definite knack for charming and winning over an audience. This was an entertainer. The six guys providing the music were a revelation too. I later discovered they were among the best of the best London had to offer, and they played up a storm that night. Ken Goff on guitar, Rennie Strasser on bass, Lou Crockett on organ, Joe Dangler on piano, Dave Atwood on sax, and Billy Hilton on drums. These were top players at the top of their game, and it showed. The group performed just about every dance venue in southern Ontario, and young musicians like I became scrambled to see them every chance we got. There was just so much to learn from the old pros. It was no surprise to us when Columbia Records came calling, though it was when they changed the band's name to Johnny and the Canadians. But sadly, a recording career was not to be. Time passed, families grew, and eventually the boys hung them up and went their separate ways, leaving a music legacy in this city that deserves to be remembered and celebrated. I have to say I'm very pleased and grateful to have been asked to be part of this induction ceremony, honoring the outstanding achievements of a band that had such a personal impact on my career and those of so many of my peers. The Johnny Stevens Sextet, Johnny and the Canadians, and through them all the other superlative London bands from the 60s who helped make this city such a wonderful place to be a teen and who set the stage for a vibrant and creative London music scene that continues to this day. Congratulations, Johnny and the Canadians.
The Johnny Stevens Sextet grew out of several local bands. Johnny Stevens, the band's charismatic, talented lead singer, hailed from Nova Scotia, the sole black member of this R&B styled outfit. The band was rounded out by bassist Rennie Strasser, drummer Billy Hilton, lead guitarist Ken Goff, organist Lou Crockett, piano player Joe Dangler, and sax player David Atwood. They drew influence from late-hour broadcasts on WLAC out of Nashville and trips to the Brass Rail to watch Ronnie Hawkins and the Hawks. They played area dances and rock shows, including acting as opening band for the Dave Clark Five and the Supremes in London. As their popularity grew, they signed with Saul Holoff, who notably managed Johnny Cash. Holoff made arrangements to have the group record their single for Columbia Records in New York City. It was at this time the group renamed themselves Johnny and the Canadians. A Million Tears Ago and Say Yeah were written by Goff and Crockett in the 60s British invasion style. Local popularity surged and the group quit their jobs and went on the road, performing at clubs and stage shows throughout Ontario and Quebec. Johnny and the Canadians were groundbreaking. Stevens, one of the few black frontmen in Canada in the early days of rock and roll bands, helped to bring down racial barriers. They once rejected a month-long tour of Florida when the promoter suggested they needed to replace their singer because he was black. By 1967, the group folded, and the various members returned home to disperse to other lives and bands, including the locally popular Plum Loco.
Hello, my name is Rene Strasser, and I was the bass player for Johnny and the Canadians. I greet you from the isolation of my country home here, and daringly maskless and with a full-blown lockdown coiffure. I would like to thank the presenters for honoring our group and also salute the other musicians who share today's induction into the London Music Hall of Fame. This certainly has been a welcome surprise. Gobsmacked, I think was the word I used when Joe Belanger from the Free Press probed my reaction. It was certainly an insight. Now, reflecting on that 60s era in the London music scene, there was a dynamic kludge of bands that went on and frequently competed, dissolved, regrouped, renamed. Most of us played for several different groups during that period. It was just the way things were. What gave our group some notoriety, I think, was our enchanting frontman, Johnny. He was black. And our 1965 Columbia record release probably put a feather in our cap too. Well, most rock bands of the era were typically 4 or 5 members. We had 7. Now, on a good day, with Kenny doubling on sax, Johnny blowing trumpet, I humbly admit we could cook us up some bad sound. Yes. Now, record sales didn't exactly go platinum. But to our band, the adventure of 3/4 of a lifetime ago certainly did. It was exciting to set up our equipment at the Columbia Studios in New York City, hoping with bubbling youthful exuberance to become the next Beatles or the Rolling Stones. But finally we decided we got to go on the road. That itch was there, and so many musicians get it, and I was thankfully able to get it and scratch it. So after a couple of adventurous years on the road, as all things must, the group folded, some returning to families and jobs, but most again migrating to new groups and in one way or another continuing to play for many decades. Now I'm saddened that 4 of the 7 of the group are now deceased, including our beloved frontman Johnny. And I feel honored to accept this award on behalf of them, as well as their surviving members, Ken Goff, Dave Atwood, and myself. Now, this award ceremony has been hobbled by a lack of personal contact as a result of the COVID dragon. But let us all carry on as we must. We salute and thank the numerous family, friends, and fans who have sent congratulations to us and our survivors. On behalf of Johnny and the Canadians, I humbly accept this award. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Heather Stevens, Johnny Stevens' wife for 47 years of his 69 years of life. I am here to accept this induction into the London Music Hall of Fame on behalf of John. Johnny and the Canadians was a pivotal group in John's life. I want to recognize Rennie Strasser, Dave Atwood Sr., better known as Cool C, and Kenny Goff. And in memory, Billy Hilton, Joe Dangler, Lou Crockett, and my husband, John Stevens. John and the Canadians were known as one of the most high-energy groups of the 1960s. I have to say that one of the most exciting gigs for them in my mind was opening for the Supremes in 1965 at the London Arena. For myself, spending time talking with Diana Ross and Mary before and after the show was a highlight. John passed away nearly 14 years ago now. I know that John would be thrilled and proud of this induction. John and I met at Masonic in St. Thomas at a teen dance. John asked me to dance, and the rest is history. 6 kids, 7 grandchildren, 1 great-grandchild later, and here we are now. I have to note that all the kids are like their dad. Outgoing, big smiles, characters, and accepting of all people. Despite the commitment to the band, John also managed to attend most of the kids' activities, from track, hockey, cheerleading, school band, football, etc. John was there cheering like a proud father. Thank you to the members of the London Music Hall of Fame for recognizing Johnny and the Canadians.